Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode of the new European Bauhaus, a digital series arranged by Triennale in collaboration with the European Cultural Representations in Milano. This 5th episode is dedicated to Finland and is co-hosted in collaboration with the Finnish Embassy in Rome. I will immediately leave the floor to Ilkka Nordberg, Minister Consul of the Embassy of Finland, to introduce my guest, the Triennale guest, and then we will start the 60-minute conversation in order to analyze, tickle, and listen to the different points of view, comments, and position of our guest regarding the European Commission project, New European Bauhaus. Ilkka Nordberg, please.
Thank you, Marco, and good evening, everybody. Regards from Rome and regards from the Embassy of Finland in Rome, Italy. Well, it's truly a great honor for Finland to participate in this series of online conferences created by Triennale Milano. And we thank for the invitation. And again, Triennale Milano has shown us the capacity to take the initiative, seize the moment and the opportunity, organizing something like this, which is a very concise way of discussing new European Bauhaus. I think we all have already acquainted us with the concept, and this creative interdisciplinary initiative itself is a thought-provoking and stimulating one, I think. And moreover, in a format like this evening, this type of online discussion we have now, it can and will bring people, experts together, but people with different background. And that again, it's always a pleasure for a diplomat to see it happen and witness and enhance it. Yes, this in this moment, particular moment in Europe and the world, there certainly is a strong demand for new energetic thinking on inclusivity, accessible spaces, sustainable solutions, and enriching experiences, as the Commission rightly has formulated it. And well, tonight we provide you with a Finnish flavor to this discussion and discourse. And I'm sure that the representative group of experts we have here today with us, knowledgeable people, they will give their input. And just shortly introducing everyone, and now I'm following the alphabetical order. So with us tonight we have here firstly Gianluca Giabardo, and he's a designer, lecturer, and educator with an international background of studies in industrial design and business. He's been working with as a duo with Livia Rossi at Dosso Fiorito, a studio they co-founded between 2012 and 2020. And in 2018, they moved to Finland, where Gianluca has been a teacher and designer in residence at Aalto University School of Arts, Design and Architecture. And there in 2020, he was admitted to the doctoral school, where he is researching symbiotic conviviality. And then we have Marianne Goebel from the private sector. And Marianne is a design professional specialized in the development and dissemination of projects at the intersection of culture and commerce. Since 2014, Marianne has been the managing director of the Finnish design company Artek, founded by Alvar and Aino Aalto and some other like-minded idealists in 1935. And Marianne has also served as the director of the Fair Design Miami, the Global Forum for Design, with yearly events in Basel, in Switzerland, and Miami, USA. Marianne is Austrian, and she has studied economics at Vienna Business School and HEC Paris. And then we have Anniina Koivu. And she's a design writer, curator, consultant, and teacher, and she divides her time between Milan and Lausanne. And she works across a number of fields, from curation to art direction, product development, editorial research projects, and which she develops for clients such as Kvadrat, Iittala, Vitra, Kamper, and the Shore Fast Foundation of Fogo Islands. She has a long list of research work and publications, very impressive one. And then, well, last but not least, in alphabetical order, Kari Korkman from Finland. And he's the founder and director of Helsinki Design Week. Moreover, he has been starting Fiskas Village Art and Design Biennale. I'm sure you all know the place in Finland, Fiskas. If you haven't visited it yet, please do that. It's a very nice and beautiful place. Kari is also co-founder and board member of World Design Weeks. He has been as well involved in a large number of product development projects and launches since the beginning of the 1990s. And he has produced and curated a large number of design exhibitions and events. Among many other things, in 2019, he was awarded an honorary doctorate at Aalto University. So I'm very pleased to have you all here with us, and well, looking forward to a very, very fruitful interaction and discussion, online discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Minister Consular Ilkka Nordberg. In the short history of the new European Bauhaus digital series, this is the first time we have such an institutional presentation, but I'm glad you did it because I'm very honored that we have a panel of incredible representatives of the design community in Finland. It's also the first time, and I would like to begin just with her, that we have as a guest someone from the private sector. We have Marianne Goebel, as Ilkka Nordberg introduced minutes ago, managing director of Artec, one of the leading design company with a great history, not only related to Europe and Finland and Europe, but it's a global brand. I'm glad to have her because usually we have curators, we have academics, we have principals of associations, of design association, or museum directors, but we figure out that we needed to include private sectors as examples of the design business community, which are absolutely crucial and fundamental for the development of design. And before starting my questions to Marianne Goebel, to all our guests that they are following our Zoom conversation, that then will also be available a recorded version on the YouTube channel of Triennale. I would love to explain why Triennale has decided to create this series of digital conferences, because this the European Commission statement was absolutely surprising for us, and positively surprising, because design and the legacy of an important school such as Bauhaus was part of a central part of a political action. And we are here. We did it with France, with Germany, with the Netherlands, and next Friday we will do it with Czech Republic, and we are here now with Finland. We want together opinions, statements, suggestions, concerns, and worries about how we can all contribute to this platform. Just yesterday, the two commissioners, the one for cohesion reforms, Elisa Ferreira, and the commissioner for innovation, research, culture, and education and youth, Marisa Gabriel, in Brussels, they had together with Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, a press conference where they launched the first phase of the new European Bauhaus, which is a design prize, a call for participation, and a website that will include and list experience, articles, and proposals that, like this one of Triennale, are contributing to this very big project. But let's start with the question, and let's start with Marianne Goebel to ask what was her first impression as a managing director of Artec when you heard this this statement last October.
Well, I have to admit that I learned about the statement from you, and I was very intrigued because I mean, an interdisciplinary approach, I think, happens on many levels and in many areas, but to see such a comprehensive invitation that would go out to science, culture, and business spheres alike is quite unique. And as you said, also, normally the private sector is not necessarily directly invited to join policy on that level. So I was personally very intrigued, and I was also intrigued as a representative of Artec, because Artec is a baby of Bauhaus. You know, the company name Artec, the fusion of art and technology, is a direct quote of Mr. Gropius. So seeing a program that would involve us as a manufacturer and that would specifically speak or make reference to the Bauhaus, I thought, well, yeah, this is something we should definitely have a look at.
So, so it was a mix of surprise and also the fact that probably if you heard this story from me, as I know that you are very well informed and you follow all the debates and the design discourse internationally, that means that probably politicians at the European level, but in general, they are used to speak to each other and they sometimes forget how to include the design community. Was this your feeling, or you probably have another opinion?
No, I didn't. I hadn't felt left out because it might have also been an oversight of mine. I'm sure they've also informed, or I hope they've also informed via other channels than usually. I think if I have to admit, I don't know where else they reached out to the design community. Did they?
Sorry, to be very honest, I mean, in any of our known magazines that we are used to refer when we want to know what's going on in the design world, either if like historical magazines or blogs, there was no evidence of this statement, but probably that's why institutions like a museum like Triennale,
exactly. So you did your job. You did your job as an amplifier.
yeah. And my second question is about the disciplines. I mean, when we think about the legacy of Bauhaus and all the disciplines that were shared with the students and taught to the students were like architecture and textile and graphic and product design. But the new European Bauhaus is also thinking to include science and demography and new materials. And many of these aspects that will be also a question later to Gianluca and to Gianluca Giabardo and Anniina Koivu, and either to Kari Korkman. What is the difference in your opinion? What can be the contribution of other disciplines to the traditional ones that they are taught in a design school?
Well, I think the definition of technology has obviously changed quite drastically in comparison to 1919, and seeing science there did not surprise me, and new materials and also digital innovation, I think they are sine qua non. They have to be part of this discourse today. I was, as a manufacturer, particularly interested to see demography or demographics there, because that shows that there is the intent to also really include the user perspective. Maybe I'm missing other human sciences. If we're saying we're actually, this is an initiative to change perspective on how we produce things, how we make things, how we bring them into circulation, how we talk about it. Maybe we're missing a bit the user perspective, like what are actually, how do we reach the people who in the end will make use of all of this? So demographics is the one, or demography is the one element that I identified which could help there. And I'm particularly interested in that because it's a big topic in Finland, if we want to now make the link to the country we're talking about, because I was looking a bit into the aging society and the needs that comes with that, and looking at the ranking of the United Nations of the countries with the highest share of populations over 65. Finland worldwide is number 3. It's only topped by Japan and Italy. So I think that topic is particularly topical for Finland. But yeah, I think I'm maybe missing more of the human sciences from, I don't know, neuroscience, psychology, sociology, anthropology. I think one component of this group should also be reflected.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I now go to another guest, following the path that what is missing and what it could be add to this platform, not only as it's seen as a school, but also as a new network to exchange, because I have a feeling, especially for a profile like Kari Korkman, that knows very well all the design policies that in the past years changed the perception and the way that politics use design for society, are also an interesting point of view. Kari, what was your impression, and from the also from the title of this initiative? Wait a second, we open your mic.
Now.
We can hear you now.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Marco, and good evening to everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to join the conversation. And when I got this invitation by Marco, I took a look at all the previous discussions that you had with France, the Netherlands, and Germany. And there was one point of view which seemed to be missing, and that was one of my first sort of thoughts that I would like to maybe take up. And as we talk about the invitation by Ursula von der Leyen to the design community, which always overwhelmingly grateful for all the attention that it was directed to the design community, and as we have heard today also, that there is not that much information yet spread about this project, which is natural as it's so fresh. But Bauhaus, which the modern definition of design owns a lot, design applied as applied arts. It's now in a need of a new definition, and somehow I feel that we should talk more about the new European design as we see it, and now that we move into this new phase where, for instance, digitalization is something that the designers are working more on. And so I hope that during this process we talk more about the European approach to this matter. But now we start with the design community, and then hopefully to a wider audience. And maybe also a design could be somehow a unifying matter to the somehow fragmented European Union, I hope, because in a global level, Europe does compete with many other areas in the world, Asia and US, and so design, which in a way was, would I say, invented in design, design was invented in Europe, but it's something that we share, and it's part of our competitive edge. So I'm not sure if I totally answered your question, but this was kind of my first perception to the matter of this new European Bauhaus.
No, you definitely replied to my question, but I also want to provoke more you in order to hear how, in this sense, this statement from the European Commission can be developed by competent profiles. That you just said that instead of a new European Bauhaus, we should talk about a new European design, and find out if this is still a possible network that we can use to reconnect different identities, different policies, different way to interpret design. We are also living a very difficult moment where for the design community, we can't meet and see each other anymore. We were used to say in design weeks, in fairs, in occasions like visiting exhibitions. So we probably also need to reinvent the way we connect and we share ideas, not just to generate business or opportunities for a single country, but for a bigger system.
Yeah, exactly. And listening to these previous discussions, there were some talks about the national design policies, and there were some of the countries that seem to lack that, and Finland is actually one of the forerunners, I think, when it comes to national design policies. We actually have maybe already a couple of them that have been provided to us by ministries of culture and Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. So we have these papers, we have it printed, but also in Finland it's not really like totally functioning. So it's we still need to promote ourselves, design as culture and as industry locally and also within Europe. When you mention these platforms that are needed and somehow because of the pandemic also have been in jeopardy, are these festivals and design weeks and Triennale, which you represent. And I would like to promote local design hubs, which are so crucial for the development, and how design weeks with multiple stakeholders can themselves do the experimenting and promote discussions and exhibiting and also networking. Those issues that Ursula von der Leyen in her invitation took up, and also all this that follows the principles and tradition of Bauhaus. So hopefully after the pandemic, we get to go back and meet each other on these events and festivals and take this movement ahead, because this can't be done only, online as we do here. We need each other and have to be close to each other and share our thoughts and ideas.
Thank you very much, Kari Korkman, for this contribution. My last question is, or like the same I addressed to Marianne Goebel about what, in your opinion, what are the other disciplines that can contribute to this course? Something that probably is already present in Finland, but I mean, the President von der Leyen also talked about sustainability, accessibility, affordability, which are like very important words, but we know that these words need like processes, ideas, and policies in order to make them real and practical for the people. Just a second. Yeah.
I think that the most important issue is education, something which Bauhaus is very much based on. And I would like to give you an example that we have been very successful in the primary schools in Helsinki, and it's called phenomenon-based learning. I don't know if you're familiar with the method, but it's a method where students study a topic or concept in a holistic approach instead of a subject-based project. And this is something that has been taking in use in the primary schools in Helsinki, and I think, to me, it reminds the principles of Bauhaus and also what we've been discussing here, that it's so important that we have this holistic view, and it's all about multidisciplinary matters, and somehow it kind of keeps up the flag, if you understand what I mean, of Bauhaus ideas. So this is maybe something that is gonna then develop and teach the young kids to become more open and with this holistic view.
Thank you very much, Kari Korkman. We touched base with education, and our next speaker is Gianluca Giabardo. There is an Italian designer now based in Helsinki and is attending a Ph.D. career in at the Aalto University. The Aalto University was the developer of the Finnish pavilion at the last international exposition of Triennale Milano. Was a project curated by Giulio Gai and Kasola Saivu. And I'd like to hear from Gianluca Giabardo there, as a scholar and as a lecturer, your reaction to this statement, and how, as an Italian professional, design professional, how is this affecting or contributing to the Finnish system?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. I think this is a great initiative and a forum for discussion, because as we saw, this idea was launched like this in the blue, was not very well kind of communicated, and I think it needs quite a lot of these events to make it kind of viable and interesting in a way, or at least to me, because I also read the statements and the texts that were put out by the Commission, and I was intrigued but quite shocked, actually. I am quite critical of what I've read, and I made a few notes. I'm gonna kind of scroll through them, but please kind of stop me if I'm going too long, because I tend to kind of take tangential ways. But I see the borrowing of the Bauhaus model to this initiative to be quite problematic, in fact, because we are digging back and putting the foundation of this EU Green Deal on the very same and now shaky paradigm that has led us to the current environmental and social crisis. So when Ursula von der Leyen wrote, "The whole Bauhaus proved that industry and good design can improve the daily life of millions of people," I think that the image that the EU has of the Bauhaus is quite romanticized and idealized, and it's very much focused on maybe the later stage of the Bauhaus, when the Bauhaus kind of converted his ways to a more functional and kind of in a way that was more served to the production and to the extraction and to the exploitative processes of industrial production. So it is a recurrent mode of the system we kind of currently live in, to throw more resources and money at a problem to create innovative solutions. But those innovative solutions are in fact kind of ways of building new businesses and new opportunities, as we already heard and discussed. But we rarely kind of go back and try to address those problems, trying to solve meaningfully the originating cause. So I think that if we look at the examples that were made, of course, carbon neutrality is important, but if the vision that we bring forward of bamboo buildings is kind of going forward with little discussion on the social, technical, and economical context that these buildings will insist on, we will have a great lighthouse, as someone in previous episodes said, but a lighthouse in the middle of a kind of polluted and unlivable sea. So I think we really need rethinking radically and changes on the social scale together with this process. And political philosopher Murray Bookchin said that ecological problems are social problems. He wrote, and I quote him, "What defines social ecology as social is its recognition of the often overlooked fact that nearly all our present ecological problems arise from deep-seated social problems. Conversely, our present ecological problems cannot be clearly understood, much less resolved, without resolutely dealing with problems within society. To make this point more concrete, economic, ethnic, cultural, and gender conflicts, among many others, lie at the core of the most serious ecological dislocation we face today." End of quote. And how can we envision this EU Green Deal? By relying on the Bauhaus model, that especially in this later stage, the one that the EU is referencing to, kind of asserted the arts to the market and transition from expressionist, explorative, experimental, and kind of idealistic era to a more industrialized one. What are we aiming to when seeing arts and technology come together? And this is a very big issue, because I see that very much in my kind of work, where Aalto is a multidisciplinary place and kind of school and university, that the initial aim was that of bringing together science and arts and business. But the multidisciplinarity and the role of art and design is often problematic in this equation, I think. So I think it's a very good news that design has such a prominent recognition and has been called by name and be invited at this table. But I have the feeling we have been brought along, maybe not for the right reason. So designers do not seem to be involved as systemic thinker mediators between different disciplines or speculative prototypers and problem setters, but rather as, once again, carrying the Bauhaus legacies as problem solvers and as stylists. Because I read in one of the statements by Ursula von der Leyen that design should make the result of scientific innovation inviting, marketable, and aesthetically pleasing. She wrote, and I quote her, "Every movement has its own look and feel, and this systemic change needs its own aesthetic." And again, she wrote, "It should show that the necessarily can be beautiful at the same time, that style and sustainability go together." And she further stressed, and this was really kind of shocking for me, that we should do so adopting a human-centered design approach. And I ask, how can a Green Deal be human-centered? Like, human-centered design is a framework that cannot work in this context for me. Is biased toward making everything and every other else bend to satisfy our anthropocentric view. We are again pushing to prioritize the survival of humans without stressing enough on the fact that we can only survive if we think ecologically and systemically. She talks about systemic thinking, but then like she pushed this like human-centered thing very much forward. And I was like, wow, this is very, very much kind of in contrast to the rest of what is written there. So we should be non-human, other than human-centered. And this is the discussion that is very much kind of on the table nowadays, I think, to systemically understand and see how we are dependent, interdependent on everything we are currently just extracting and exploiting without replating. So, and another point about human-centered that goes beyond design is like, and it's maybe you said in the introduction, we shouldn't make propaganda, but this is very political point that like, how can we be human-centered when we kind of enclose the human-centeredness of our focus to Europe? Like, then we have the borders, and the humans that are outside our borders then are not humans anymore. We are treating them like something else. And so I'm wondering, like, this ecological approach, this systemic approach doesn't see any border. There is no border there. We should think kind of beyond that. And we should think that the humans, if we want to be human-centered, we have to be human-centered beyond Europe. The inclusiveness should be kind of really broad. And this is not there in a way, I think. And to conclude, I think that the way that certain themes have been also brought forward, like natural building materials, energy efficiency, demographic or future-oriented mobility, or resource efficient digital innovations. I extracted this from her text and adopted as the place to start the delivery phase of the project are also quite questionable in the method and in the substance. How did they come up with those? Like, who chose this to be kind of the prominent point of discussion? I think that the deliberation should be participated and participatory, and more emerge from a process that do not borrow kind of self-fulfilling mega trends from I don't know what source. And I think these forums are very important, because that's when we can challenge these ideas and discuss them. And design methods are very powerful in this enabling of publics and citizens and more than human stakeholder to participate and deliberate on what is really the green new future that we want to live in. And maybe it's not smart cities and digital innovation, but maybe it's convivial cities, regenerative production, non-destructive competition, and unexploitative interdependence. And this is what I'm trying to study in my research, and at the crossroad of biology, design, social and economic theories, and the more specifically in the politics of food, and trying to experiment ways that we can challenge this given for granted invisible model that we have to compete to survive, to embrace ways of symbiotic coexistence and co-survival and co-evolution, because that's actually the way we have evolved. We all get kind of brainwashed with Darwin, but kind of there has been endosymbiotic ways that cells and bacteria have evolved together, not kind of prevailing only on one another. So I'm trying to adopt this framework in my research, and this is also what I would like to bring to this discussion. So sorry if I went a bit long, but...
No, it wasn't long. You were in your time frame, and I thank you very much, Gianluca, also because you raised issues that they were already part of the previous discussions. I remember Claudia Banz in the German episode, and also Marina Otero-Versier when we talked with the Dutch delegation. Of course, we see also, thanks to your critics, many limits of this project launched by the European Commission. And we often think that using Bauhaus name and framework and legacy was it was a communication decision, and it was also the reason, I mean, they thought that this was an umbrella that could cover and include many countries possible. But of course, this also referred to methodology and to a structure that can't work nowadays, and also referring to the moment when you talked about the borders. It's also very important because, I mean, what happens here in Europe immediately affects what is just immediately crossing the border or in other region aspects and communities. Also, the world community and European community needs to be somehow reformed, and that's why we do this series of talk, also to end into a forum in spring, because we would love to be included around the table of this project and not just be whisperers or actors that from the cultural position from museums, schools, or design weeks, or either companies, we suggest something that is happening without listening to our debate, to our discourses that are already at a level that they processed all these theories that, as you mentioned, they were trends and probably they were not anymore so useful and coherent to what is happening today. So thank you, Gianluca, and I now pass to Anniina Koivu, Finnish curator and professor at the ECAL in Lausanne, and I ask Anniina to reply immediately to all these critics, or to follow or to hear our point of view about not exactly what Gianluca said, but how is the point of view of a school or a teacher that is in an environment where many of these critics or this idea that we need to include disciplines and methodologies are already part of the game in the classrooms.
Hello, everyone. Many thanks for the invitation. Fantastic statement, especially by Gianluca, I have to say. I did address the short introduction to the new European Bauhaus from the point of view of the design practice, profession, and design education. So I'm going there. I did get hooked by one statement in the introduction, which says that good design can improve lives. That's very true, of course, but it's also quite a shortcut because on one hand, it demands, rightfully so, that the entire design industry needs to do good design. But on the other hand, it implies also that not everything that is being produced is of good design. So what we really should ask maybe is, what does it take to do good design, and how can this be enabled, not regulated? Because as often as these discussions move into also the political sphere and legislations, it can go into regulations. So the new European Bauhaus platform should really become a place for, let's say, proactive or experimental opportunity instead of a new set of rules, regulations, labels, and certificates which tend to suffocate any new project. To that statement, I think we should add something which goes along the lines like knowledge is at the heart of progress. And so on one hand, that does link again also to Finland and to Helsinki's recent Oodi library designed by Anna architects, which I think is a great example because it places knowledge in the most important spot in the center of the capital, which has a huge symbolical value if we think about it. And I would also like to interpret this as, let's say, a move or as a way of saying that knowledge and the understanding of good design is a collective effort. And not only let's say, the heavy responsibility handed over to today's designers and creative industry. Because the moment we hear good design, we always think it's in the hands of the designers, they should know what they're doing, and so forth. If I may, I'd also like to introduce or bring a new term into this discussion. I think there's this wonderful term called unmanufacturing that should become more of a household word in any design or production process, because other than recycling, which we all hear, but which is not really tangible, unmanufacturing is very easy to picture, because unmanufacture means to undo something or reverse a product to its original elements. In the best case, to the elements virgin quality before it was ever manufactured for the first time. And if we approach the question of sustainability from the point of view of a product's end moment or afterlife, the call for good design takes on a new dimension, I think. For example, new composite materials, which are very often highlighted as a new sustainable alternative to more harmful existing materials, actually might become questionable again. Typically composites are, for example, a mixture of synthetic and natural materials, or even fully natural materials, which nevertheless most often need a glue or other binder to hold them together. Composites are very difficult to manufacture because they cannot be undone, as we said before. If you imagine a typical recycling process where pieces are shredded to small size fractions, composite materials cannot be separated from each other and finally still end up in a landfill or are being burned. Whereas unmanufacturing means to be able to disassemble into individual, clearly unidentifiable or reusable materials, and then can be re-looped into the new production cycle. Now, why do I say that? Because if we spin this further, it would mean that unmanufacturing goes hand in hand with the ability to disassemble objects. If an object can be disassembled, it can also be repaired, and therefore a product can take on a longer life. Hence, next to the new European Bauhaus platform, we should, I think, look very carefully at the call that's being made right to repair by the movement that's also being discussed now on European level. It's a fundamental move in a shift of how products should be designed, developed, manufactured, and finally unmanufactured as well. And then if we bring this question to the university level, that's where good design is educated. And that's also where this thinking shift is already starting. Because I think we can already witness such shift or move towards a more holistic understanding of the production cycle or a product's life cycle in universities like Aalto or ECAL, where I'm teaching. And what's, I think, most remarkable in it is also that it's strongly demanded by the new future designers, by the students, which shouldn't be underestimated. So to conclude, what I wonder is, what would good design really look like if we started from its afterlife and endpoint? And would design look differently on an object, a furniture piece? Would it look different if the brief was written using words like unmanufacture, disassemble, and repair? And I think this would be a beautiful starting point for a research project on university level, for example, which then moves out of university into the design industry, where finally this so-called new good design is actually finally put into action.
Thank you very much, Anniina Koivu. I have a question. How can we say to politicians and lawmakers that we don't need regulation, that we don't need to fit this project into a bureaucratic box, or but more into suggestions and open source exchange platform? I also would love to ask this after your answer to Ilkka Nordberg, as, let's say, is a representative of regulators and politicians with us, and then also to hear his final remarks. Please, Anniina.
Well, education. I think Kari put out a very great method. Is it called the phenomenon or phenomena method that you look at something holistically from all aspects and you bring different spheres and domains together. So definitely education in general will help also politicians to maybe be more daring, not to framework everything precisely. It definitely takes courage from the designers to insist, I could imagine. What else would it take? It's a bit like safety regulations, isn't it? Something happens, somebody hurts him or herself falling off a chair, and look, a 3-legged stool needs to become a 4-legged stool, because otherwise it's a hazard for your life. And it's written in safety regulations, and insurance companies take over. It's very difficult to tackle it, so it becomes more a race for the loophole in this. I think it's more probably just common logical thinking sometimes, without rushing into trying to foresee problems, but actually work on a trial and error basis.
Thank you very much. I now ask to open the chat to our audience, and I also, while we wait for possible questions, ask Ilkka Nordberg to share his final remarks or comments on what we've been listening for the past 54 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Marco, and thank you, everybody. It has been most interesting to listen to all of you, and yeah, just a couple of remarks. Yes, well, the whole question of when you make references to historical undertakings or phenomena and things like Bauhaus. So of course there are certain, let's say, challenges. Some people might say or even dangers, because of course if you put a label on something, you normally create expectations, and people have expectations linked to that certain well, title or in this case Bauhaus. But then again, it's let's say I would remind everybody, of course, that as we all know, so the legacy of Bauhaus and the people linked to that original Bauhaus, of course, they and their legacy got far. So there is a reason why we talk about the legacy and the heritage, and because it was, of course, in general terms, it was a combination of human nature and energy, and they were striving for creating new things. And then again, keeping it in, let's say, tonight we are talking about the Finnish, let's say, point of view and the contribution and thinking. So this striving for creating new things and imagining the future, if I'm not mistaken, what also Bauhaus was about. So that is actually something we are, in a certain way, in Finland, we are very fond of doing that ourselves. And yeah, it's also good to remember that sometimes when we mention Bauhaus, to some people, it's like mentioning an optimistic utopia, but an utopia with a very down-to-earth approach. And it's listening to everybody now. I'm just thinking how on every turn we kind of come back to the question of how much we need creativity and a humanistic approach to get to the future. And from let's say my personal point of view as a diplomat, it's like someone just said that hopefully in the near future we can again be more in touch with each other, not just virtually and not just online. And yeah, this is very, very stimulating discussion in many ways. But yes, these are more or less my, let's say, first thoughts and remarks. But please,
yeah, thank you.
Somebody else can.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ilkka Nordberg. I would love to ask to Marianne Goebel her point of view on this theory shared by Anniina Koivu, this idea that the companies together with the designer should also think in a life cycle of a product, the unfold part, the unfold moment. If I like to hear if Arctic, that has a long tradition and a long history, is now thinking about this aspect. I, for example, know that there's a store in Helsinki where you can buy second-hand or second cycle Arctic furniture pieces, but this is just, an element or an episode that it's my memory. I'd like to hear if there are policies or ideas or projects.
No, I can absolutely relate to what Anniina says, and I have to admit that sometimes it's even shocking for us to see today how these things were anticipated by the designers in like 80 years ago, and how complicated it seems to do the same thing today. Because you made reference to this, we have a platform called Arctic Second Cycle, which started buying back furniture that was pre-loved and brings it back into circulation. And the interesting thing, what we see there is actually what people do themselves to the furniture. So how this furniture was thought in a way that the user could change it. You buy a dining table, you don't need a dining table, you cut off the legs, make it a sofa table, you repaint it, you repair it, you reweb it. So the unmanufacturing or even the friendly hacking was, I don't know if it was anticipated by the designer, but it was at least made possible 85 years ago. And today it's not as easy to anticipate the unmanufacturing or the afterlife that's not controlled anymore by the designer or the manufacturer. So absolutely, yes, Anniina, I think this is not something that should just happen on university level. This is happening to a certain extent. Of course, we think about the afterlife or even the final stage of such a project that we put on this planet, but we definitely have to do it much more systematically than we've been doing it in the past.
Thank you very much, Marianne Goebel. I would like to thank all the other guests. Unfortunately, the clock is ringing and we need to end our conversation. I'd like to thank Anniina Koivu, Kari Korkman, and Gianluca Giabardo for their intervention, for their ideas. And this is just a moment that will continue. This is not the end of a long journey that is will end with a forum in Triennale, either physically and digitally. We don't know yet. In April, where we will include all the contribution of the guests, and because we think, and I think that's also my my statement, my curatorial duty to bring this to the attention of the European community, because this project by Triennale is not in collaboration with them, but they are constantly informed, because we want to be and we need to be heard by them so they can make something more interesting and valuable for the design, for the European design community. And not only European, I mean, from Europe can start like a bigger discourse in other continents, and without thinking too much of borders and national flags or identities. I'd like also to say to all our friends that are following the conversation that the next episode is dedicated to the Czech Republic. It will be on Friday at 6 p.m. Central European time, and it's in collaboration with the Czech Center, Cultural Center here in Milano. And among the guests, we will have Eva Knobloch, Chief Curator at the Decorative Art Museum of Prague, and the Adam Stech, which is the editor and designer based in Prague, and other guests. So I invite you all to stay in touch and follow Triennale website for the next episode with Czech Republic. So thank you once again to all of you, and for the Finnish episode, everything was delivered. So thank you very much. Goodbye.